Okay, so now we're on to oxidative phosphorylation, and recall that this occurs right on the cristae of the mitochondrial membrane. So we have our cell wall, our plasma membrane, and then our mitochondria. With the mitochondrion, we have that outer membrane, and then we have an inner membrane that is highly folded to aid in all of these reactions that are taking place. Between the two membranes, we have that intermembrane space. And then on this side, I'm going to exaggerate that inner membrane fold the cristae. Remember that the mitochondrial membrane consists of, just like all of the membranes that I've been talking about, a phospholipid bilayer, and each of those phospholipids has that head and that tail. And in this case, we're going to have some protein complexes embedded. So we're going to have the protein complex 1, the protein complex 2, the protein complex 3, and the protein complex 4. We'll also eventually talk about ATP synthase, and I like to draw it as a little lollipop, and that'll make more sense in a moment. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and fill in all of those phospholipids, and then we'll continue. Alright, so we're going to take from the citric acid cycle all of the electron carriers, so NADH and FADH2. Also from glycolysis, we'll be getting those electrons in as well. For the NADH, they will come up and drop off their electrons to complex 1 to become NAD+. Okay, so they're oxidized there. The complex picks up those 2 electrons. The FADH2 is going to bring its electrons up to complex 2 and drop off its electrons to become oxidized to FAD. So once those electrons are dropped off, I'm going to do those in a different color, I think, here. Okay, so we have those electrons being dropped off. So that is going to be transported from complex to complex. Electrons, electrons, electrons. Now, while complexes 1, 3, and 4 have those electrons handy, what they're going to do is take protons that the NADH dropped off and the FADH2 dropped off. They're going to take those protons and they're going to pump them across to the other side of the membrane. So they're going to pump those protons across to the other side. And thereby, you're going to see a proton lake, that's what I like to refer to it as, building up in this intermembrane space tons and tons of protons here. And if you remember anything about pH, that means that the pH is going to be quite acidic in this region compared to the matrix of the mitochondria. And so this buildup of protons across that membrane, that is your electrochemical gradient. It's the difference in the proton motive force there. Proton motive force. Okay, we're going to use it to do work in just a moment. So this is that electrochemical osmotic gradient. Okay. So that's being built up. And eventually, what's going to happen is all of those protons are going to move back down their concentration gradient. And when that happens, ATP synthase is going to create ATP. It'll force an inorganic phosphate onto ADP to make ATP. And it's going to do this a lot. This is where most of the ATP comes from, is from this gradient that we built up, moving that molecular machine to make tons and tons and tons of ATP, turning that little turbine, using that lake that we built of protons, letting them go down just like you would in a dam to turn the turbine, and forcing those phosphates onto ADP. We're going to store energy in those bonds, and so ATP can be used anywhere else in the body to do work. We have something we need to take care of though. Remember that electron we had over here that we were moving around? We can't leave it here. You've probably all had the sensation of being shocked before. Well, imagine if electrons just kept moving here and building up and building up. Probably not a good idea to be shocking our little mitochondria. So what's going to happen is we are going to, well, the cell, the mitochondria, is going to pick up those electrons, and oxygen is going to do that for us. It's very electronegative, meaning that it can strip electrons off of here without any problem. It's also going to pick up a couple of protons on the way to form water. And that ends our process of oxidative phosphorylation.